Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the host of Apra Talks, Gareth Griffin.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Apra Talks. Before we get started, I want to say a special thank you to all our volunteers, speakers, our conference chair this year, Andalyn Hackney. All of you make this conference great. Give them all a round of applause, please. So, welcome to Apra Talks. My name is Gareth Griffin, and I am your host today. This talk this year focuses on Apra's past, present, and future. It's the 30 years in the making of Apra. And this year, these talks are going to be amazing. So the first question I have for y'all is, what do Microsoft Windows 2.0, The Simpsons, RoboCop, and Apra have in common? There we go. It all started in 1987. And it's amazing how all of them, through the past 30 years, have been able to reinvent themselves through all the changes that we have in society, all the trends and everything. And as we celebrate Apra's 30th anniversary, we will look at the evolution of our industry over the last 3 decades. So a lot has changed since the early days of doing research. Like, can you imagine trying to do research without the internet? Our folks that have been around for a while know exactly what that's like. So now we're able to integrate all of our research, our data analytics products, prospect management, all of that together. And now we have some amazing new innovations that look at machine learning and all the kind of things that we can do with technology. As a historian, I am super excited about the evolution of our industry and how we've been able to adapt and evolve over the 30 years. And these presenters today are going to have very, very unique and amazing perspectives on our industry, past, present, and future. Here we go. After the presentations today, you'll have the opportunity to chat with your colleagues and reflect on what you heard today, be able to chat with each other. Something special about this group in particular, I'm looking at you, Lori, is the ability to use social media. All of us are on social media. So please, while you're listening to today's talks, tweet, Facebook, whatever you like to do, and use the hashtag ApraPD2017 so we can let all our colleagues here and at home know what's going on with what we're doing here. Plus, with the tweets that you're sending out, you might be able to see on the Twitter wall on the Apra booth. If you look at your table, you have some pretty amazing props. Thanks to the Apra Talks folks for getting us some amazing props. These all have a theme of 1987. We hope that you have fun with the props, take photos, share with your Twitter followers with those pictures. So time has come for the dreaded icebreaker. So the icebreaker this morning is one of my favorites. It's called 2 Truths and a Lie. So you pick 2 simple truths and 1 simple lie that you're going to share with a partner at your table, and then they get to guess which one is the lie. So I'll have an example for you. I have 3 little stories. One is I won a scholarship on a TV game show. Disneyland is my favorite park. And I've never seen Game of Thrones. So which one is the lie? Is it the scholarship? Applause. No. Is it Disneyland? Show of applause. Or is it Game of Thrones? Oh, fairly even. I've actually never been to Disneyland. We're here and I haven't even gone down the street. So now it's y'all's turn. Partner up with somebody at your table. Share your 2 truths and a lie. We are going to circle back in a little while. So we'll circle back in about 10 minutes. So enjoy. Welcome back, everyone. Wow, y'all are really into your conversations. That's awesome. So, I hope you enjoyed the dreaded icebreaker. By the noise in the crowd, I think you all had a great time. Now we know a little bit about our partners and we hopefully made some new friends, and we definitely know who the good storytellers are in this audience, I think. So now it's time for our first speaker today, Joe Boki. We're so glad that he's here. He is the Executive Director of Advancement Services at the California Institute of Technology. In addition to his positions at Caltech, Joe served as Executive Director at Cal Poly Pomona, as the Bucknell University's Director of Advancement and Information Services, the Associate Vice President for Advancement Operations at Marquette University, and as the Director of Development at WITF, Inc. Joe's presentation this morning will be Building the Prospect Development Foundation. So he is going to be looking at the past, so we're really excited about his presentation, and without further ado, we'd like to welcome Joe to the stage.
Good morning, everyone. First, I'd like to thank Ryan Frank and Liz Clark for asking me to do this presentation. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to all of you, and a very big crowd, so thank you very much for coming this morning. Oops, I already messed up the first slide. So in the beginning, this group of people met not too far away from here to start what became the CARA chapter of APRA. You may recognize some of these faces. You may even recognize one of the ties in this picture. And yes, it's the same tie. But this group of people were my mentors. These are the people that brought me into the research field and started me on my path to speak to you here today. Honestly, I still feel like this kid almost every day. But I thought I'd start you with a flashback to the 1990s. The top 10 misconceptions about prospect research. This is straight from Prospect L back in the old days when we first started it. Number 10, the reason research is so quiet is that we can't afford a radio. Number 9, research is a branch of the Public Information Office. Number 8, don't do any work. Just look in your computer and give me whatever you have in there. Number 7, of course we know exactly which John Smith you're talking about. Number 6, a full profile in 2 hours? Yes, that's my favorite assignment. Number 5, online sources solve all of our problems. 4, mind reading is in our job description. 3, missing files don't affect our work at all. We have the contents memorized. Number 2, we can find anything out about anyone, anytime, anywhere, and anyhow. And the number 1 misconception about prospect research, all we do is read newspapers. Really, honestly, this is something that my boss said to me. But back in the day when I started, this was the state of the art for research. Paper files, libraries, courthouse documentation, this is where I started. Those people that you saw took me to the Orange County Courthouse and showed me how to look at probate court records. They showed me how to look at, to find things in the library that I never knew existed. Traveling to the library and the courthouse, as well as our own file services, was our primary source of information. And in fact, I'm pretty sure that at UCI, there's some researchers here, they still receive materials from investor relations offices in California that have my name addressed to them, because one of my tasks was looking at all the investor relations materials. Despite my assertion at the time that I could find anything in the library, research tasks proved a little bit more difficult. I got a call from my boss. They were having a donor event in Newport Beach. It was on January 8th. I think it was around Christmas time that she called. It was Elvis's birthday on January 8th, and the task that they gave me was to find Elvis's fried peanut butter and banana sandwich recipe. What did I do? I ran off to the library. It's got to be in the library. Sure enough, it was not in the library. No surprise there. So today, I would just simply Google Elvis's peanut butter and banana sandwich, and I get 258,000 hits. But we didn't have Google back then. In fact, in 1992, there were only 2,000 websites in total, and most of those were academic related and some government ones. So what did I do? I racked my brain and I racked my brain, and finally I said, you know what? I will call Graceland. I called Graceland, got transferred around several times, had to hang up and make a couple of phone calls, but eventually I got to the gift shop. And the gift shop lady told me, hey, they're publishing a book called Are You Hungry Tonight? All of Elvis's recipes. But they're not publishing it until August. And I was like, ah. And she said, but I have a proof copy. And so after a little cajoling, she agreed that if I bought the copy of the book, ordered a copy of the book right then and there, that she would fax me a copy of the page that had the peanut butter and jelly sandwich. This was a state of art of research in 1992. But this anecdote really drives home a valuable lesson. And with all respect to James Carville, it is about communication. Bobby Strand said in one of her many articles, actually this was the book, let me read this. Of course, the critical face-to-face contact is the most powerful evidence-gathering tool of all. Now, she was talking about the development officers going out and serving as information sources for the research that we do, providing contact reports and things like that. But the epiphany that I had was research is about face-to-face contact as well. Human beings can talk to each other and get information from each other. It's not all in paper. It's not all online. We have to communicate with everyone that we interact with.
I have a question.
Oh, what is it?
The spruce bud worm. How much damage is done annually to the American forest by the spruce bud worm?
Miss Warren.
That took me 3 weeks. I know.
How much damage is done annually to American forests by the spruce bud worm?
What was the answer, Bunny, remember?
$138,464,359 and some cents.
Well, now let's see what Emmy has to say.
$138,464,359.12.
Now, how long did that take your department, Miss Watson?
45 minutes.
Well, even at that, you can see that this one operation alone saved your department 44 minutes.
So first, I have to give a shout out to someone who I believe is in this room. He's supposed to be sitting in the back coughing during my presentation. And Brian Fegan, one of my colleagues at Caltech, suggested that I take a look at Desk Set and use a clip from there. And so thank you, Brian, for this clip. It works out perfectly. The old timers in the room will remember this, and it really resonates. At least it does with me. You know, computers were the new thing. Computers were going to save us. My boss said to me at one point, hey, Napoleon has this formula on his computer about how to estimate net worth. Find out what it is. Like it was a top secret special thing that only he and his computer had in there. But the concept of the computer has been our savior, has been around for a very, very long time, as you can see, because this movie is from 1957. If you've ever seen the entire movie, you know that eventually a computer crisis happens. The human beings have to come in and save the day. Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn kiss, and everything is wonderful and terrific. So I think that in a lot of ways that this will resonate with everyone in the room. But computers in 1992 were kind of a newfangled thing. Gareth said something about, research without the internet. Well, we did not really do research on the internet in 1992. In fact, this is how we did research. So you may laugh, but this sound was the cutting-edge sound of research in the early 1990s. LexisNexis, Dialog, DataTimes, DataQuick, all these dial-up services that we had access to. Oh my God, we can find anything that we can imagine. As long as it occurred between 1985 and 1992, it might be in DataTimes. So it was a very, very interesting time. And some of you, this picture is representative of an Apra conference that I attended in 1997 in Pittsburgh. I was in charge of the computer lab, and I set the computer lab up and was the help desk guy, essentially, for that conference. People actually came to the conference so they could do free searches. People actually came to the conference so they could have access to these resources. Today, we take all these things for granted. At the time, checking email and posting to ProspectL was the form of tweeting that you guys are doing right now. So we cast the net a little wider. Prospect L is a direct result of me and that Elvis episode. I realized that I didn't know a researcher up at Chapman University, which was just a few miles up the 5 freeway from where I worked at UC Irvine, let alone somebody in Nashville or at Vanderbilt, someplace back where I could have had some help. So I started Prospect L, and we, and by the collective we, I mean the CARA group, the Southern California researchers, used that initially to reach out to each other and communicate with each other. It wasn't very long until all of a sudden I was getting requests from people across the country to join the group. Okay, great, the more the merrier. We put people in there. And my good friend Randy Bunny started the Internet Prospector with other denizens of Prospect L in order to provide curated information on the list to help make our research lives easier. At Northwestern University, Christina Pulaski and her research team put together the tax assessor database, one place where all the information could be stored and a researcher could go and find out who was the tax assessor in some county in the middle of nowhere and try to find out property information. These things were really, really the result of us communicating with each other. But they introduced new problems. More information meant people expected us to do more. The project that I'm talking about was that UCI had done electronic screening with Martz and Lundy. We screened 100,000 records. We received 75,000 ratings back from Martz and Lundy. That seems almost ludicrous today when I stand up here and say this to you. That's a very high hit rate. But Martz and Lundy wasn't providing us wealth screening information. They were providing us scoring. They were telling us what the potential was for the prospects that we had in our database. So we got 75 ratings back. There were overlapping assignments. UCI is a big school. We were a little bit balkanized in terms of how the development officers were set up. So the thing that I took from this was, how can we make this information useful? Fundraisers started immediately cold calling the people at the top of this. For those of you old timers who remember Martz and Lundy PPR scores, PPR 1 through 4 meant that these prospects had a propensity to make a $10,000 gift, a high propensity to make a $10,000 gift. The development officers were like, we love it. They took the information and they started making calls. Almost immediately, they came back, this information's crap. This person doesn't have $10,000. Why did you give me this name? I think that that resonates with people today as well. You have to remember that in the early days of 1992, 1993, that just like in the clip from Desk Set, people thought that the computer was infallible. They thought that this information was going to save their bacon and find them all the prospects they needed in order to meet their fundraising goals. Well, obviously it wasn't. And so how do we approach this problem? Well, when I was in the Army, I learned about the Eisenhower Box. And hopefully most of you have seen this before. Are we doing the right things? What is important? Why is it urgent? And to try to concentrate on the two green boxes and try to avoid the yellow and the red box. Right? So this was what I how I tried to approach this particular problem. It doesn't apply exactly, but what we did figure out was the coordinate system. Right? We've got all these PPR scores. Let's map them on one of the axes. Then what do? What information do we have that we can map on the other axis? Total giving. So we tried it. We did it. Dots came up on the thing, which all of a sudden we're like, oh, we've got priority 1 and we've got priority 2. Make some more phone calls, people go out. It worked. It was better, but it wasn't quite good enough. So then we tried total years of giving, right? So before I'd ever even heard of an RFM score, we were using the frequency and the total monetary value in order to produce some kind of a prioritized research list and prioritized prospect list for the development officers. It's interesting as I look back on it now, technology has been this total driver of what we do. But it wasn't just the technology piece of things that did that. What really drove and continues to drive our continued existence as prospect research professionals is essentially, can we add value, right? Again, Bobby Strand said it best. This is from 1997 as well, different article, but the use of technology may be the most visible change in prospect development during the last couple of decades, but it's far from the most dramatic. Strategic thinking and planning undertaken by fundraising professionals has transformed the outcome of prospect development from the process of finding facts to a comprehensive program, including segmentation of the prospect pool, identification of top prospects, and amazing contributions to the corporate intelligence regarding the resulting individuals, foundations, and businesses to form a foundation for solid cultivation and solicitation strategies. This, in 1997, is where we are today. We have evolved. the tools have evolved, we continue to evolve, but Bobby Strand still resonates. I'd like to thank you all, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk about the good old days, and good luck with the rest of your conference.
Thank you, Joe. That was an amazing presentation. It's amazing to think about how far we've come since the beginning of the Apra 30 years ago. Now I'd like to invite to the stage Heather Marzinski. Heather serves as Associate Chair in the Department of Development at the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota with leadership responsibilities for the program areas of prospect management, research, and analytics. She's a former CARA board member and currently serves on the Curriculum Planning Committee for Apra PD 2017. Over her 17-year career on the field of prospect development, Heather has presented about development reporting, data access, and government transparency related to the IRS Form 990 and the Dodd-Frank Act. We'd like to welcome Heather to the stage to present today on Apra Present. So welcome, Heather.
Hi, everyone. So, let me put this forward a little bit. All right, so good morning, everyone. When I started to prepare my remarks for today's portion of Apra Talks, I thought a lot about what we do at work every day. And who are we? Meaning, what skill sets do we bring to the table in the various educational backgrounds that we all come from? I reflected on how we serve, meaning even within our industry and in our development offices, meaning the highs and lows of working with some of our development officers. And finally, I'll tell you a little bit what I'm doing presently at the Mayo Clinic. So I don't know if this happens to anybody else, but how many of you internally cringe a little bit when someone you don't know comes up to you at a party and asks you, what do you do for a living? Sometimes I open my mouth, I take a deep breath, and even after working 16 years in this industry, I have a hard time explaining in a complete way what we do about work, what we do at work. So my response is usually lengthy, and it leaves the listener a little glazed over. I pepper the response with words like are on the slides here. I talk about analytics, that's a buzzword, so everybody's like, oh, okay, I know what you do. Or then I'll bring in, I work closely with development officers on their lists. I help them build fundraising strategies. I talk about performance management and how I find prospects for development officers to work with. You know, usually at that point, somebody's like, they're mumbling, they're like kind of trying to get away from me saying, oh, it's very interesting, wow, how analytical. But to me, and I'm sure to many of you as well, our work is fascinating and inspiring work. It deserves a better elevator speech than that. Our efforts within the realm of the fundraising office are often multiple and varied. Our impact on the present-day fundraising office is undoubtedly strong. No longer are gut feelings trusted as much. I'm sure many of you are asked by your VPs or your executives on a monthly basis, if not weekly, give us some data to back up this good business decision. Or more and more of us are just spending our weeknights. I live now in Minnesota, so weekends too. There's some long winter weekend nights there. Learning about new techniques and learning new techniques with Tableau to enhance our efforts at work. We now frequently collaborate with DO managers on which KPIs to develop that will understand fundraiser performance. But my point is this, as our roles become more diverse, varied, and complex, I challenge all of you to craft your industry speech so that our colleagues within the profession and even without can understand what we do in a more complete way. So in our profession, we come from many, many backgrounds. I'm sure you've noticed this even in your own development offices. I came to this profession by way of the Library and Information Science program. I was really interested in research and information. I got my first job as a prospect researcher. And as a manager, I've noticed that I've hired people from all walks of life. I've hired people that have a PhD in sociology, former journalists and attorneys who quickly add value with their excellent research and writing skills. We are a meticulous and curious sort that come from many types of backgrounds. Our talents have multifaceted ways of adding value to the fundraising operation. And we serve in our roles as well. We are cheerleaders for our development officers, encouraging and congratulating them on their progress and success with benefactor relationships. But we serve each other in our own community. We have built great pillars of advice in our community to broaden our thinking and to advance our understanding. So how many of you have been sitting in your office and just stumped on a big project, or you don't know how to expand a business process that you already have in place? You know you could do it better. So you're sitting in your office and you're thinking, I don't know, what would Josh do? Or what would Helen do? You know, we are so fortunate to have leaders like this to help encourage us and grow and understand our industry. And I haven't even mentioned all the people that write blogs. I know there's a lot of you that I routinely go to your blogs. I appreciate that information. I appreciate the information that you post to LinkedIn on various, during the year. And even all of you that have worked so hard to put together some presentations for the breakout sessions today. We all appreciate that, and we need that to help us grow and progress in our industry. And for those of you that haven't shared yet, as you're here at this presentation and you consider what you haven't seen or what you would like to see, challenge yourself to bring that to the next conference. We'd love to hear about it. So fast forward to Mayo Clinic. I joined Mayo Clinic in 2014, and I was really ready for an environment that was different from my past career. I'd spent a lot of time in the academic setting, and I was really ready for a medical environment to try to apply what I knew about fundraising. So to give you some quick background about Mayo Clinic, it's in Minnesota. It's in the middle of the Midwest, and according to the U.S. News and World Report, for the year 2017, we were the top-rated medical institution in the nation. That might change this year, but we're always close to the top. So as you know, I just showed a map. You can see how Rochester was really, far in the middle of kind of nowhere. And for all of Mayo's sophistication, it's a world-renowned medical destination center. It's literally placed in the middle of a cornfield. There's been times where I felt like I was completely surrounded by corn, like riding my bike or something like that. But for all its sophistication, it's just planted there for a reason. It's an incredible place to focus and to study, and for our patients that come to Mayo Clinic, a great, peaceful place to heal. The clinic was established 150 years ago, and the mission of teamwork, sharing knowledge continues to be a really strong cultural element to working there, as it was during the 1890s. It's very strong there. So this culture of teamwork really surprised me. Now this picture looks kind of scripted, but it's for real. That guy in the corner kind of looks like a model, but he works there. But this is a very real situation at Mayo Clinic. I find myself sitting across the conference table from physicians that replaced young people's hearts, that even spearheaded important Alzheimer's research and performed one of the first successful face transplants. As I share my data with them, they're interested because they know Mayo Clinic's bottom line counts on our philanthropic dollars. They listen intently to my ideas about how they can understand their patients' philanthropic potential. I see that they value my input, and they respect my suggestions to improve our efforts to raise the funds for Mayo Clinic. More than anything, what I saw is what a difference it made to share the right data that professionals need to make the very best decisions. It's undoubtedly clear to me that our work today depends on accurate input to perform in an increasingly competitive philanthropic world. Our curious mindsets have never been more needed in our workplaces, and the diversity of our career backgrounds have positioned us to deliver actionable insights to nonprofit missions. So let's continue our culture of information sharing and extraordinary teamwork to push our profession into the future. Thank you very much.
Give it up for Heather. That was an amazing presentation. So next up, talking about the future, is Tariq Shah. Tariq is the Assistant Director of Prospect Analytics at UC Berkeley. He's been there since 2006, working on building analyses, models, tools, and other data-related products. He has previously presented at CASE, CARA, and Apra conferences, and participated in participated on the team that built Berkeley's Entity Match web service, which received a 2016 CASE Grand Gold Award. Tariq was tasked today about the future of our industry, and his presentation, Our Partnerships with Machines, will leave you ready to step boldly to go where no researcher has gone before. So please welcome Tariq.
Hey, everyone. All right. A couple of years ago, two of my colleagues, Lucila and Mallory, they asked me if I could help them with a project that they were working on. They'd been entering data about venture funding for startups that had been founded by Cal alums into the database, and they needed some help pulling it out. They wanted to run some reports and some summaries. The data they were entering looked something like this. Now, this may not strike you as super fascinating. Maybe you enter data like this all the time. But I'm kind of a data enthusiast, and I was really struck by this use of the comment field for structured data. And I know everyone in the room has done this. You're all amazing data people. But the thing that struck me is those pull-downs and those validated numeric entry fields, those have a rigid structure that makes it easier to run queries and do analysis. But the comment field, that's usually there to communicate with other people who happen upon this record in the database. And yet, here were my colleagues creating a rigid structure where none had existed before, using the comment field not to communicate with other people, but to communicate with machines. The official name for the type of data that my colleagues were entering is machine readable, which is just a fancy way of saying that the format lends itself to being processed easily by a computer. But I like this idea of communicating, because it highlights something that I think is important about our relationship with our machines. We communicate with them because they are our partners. And that's what I want to talk about today, our collaborative relationship with our computers. What we hear a lot about today is how computers and technology are going to replace every single one of us. In 10 years, you all won't be here. It'll just be a bunch of laptops on tables. But I like to focus on the ways in which we work with computers rather than compete against them. So the example that we saw already is one where we humans have to make a small sacrifice, a small alteration in our workflow, in order to encourage participation by our machine colleagues. For another example, as it turns out, it's kind of difficult, very difficult, to teach a computer to read and understand contact reports well enough to extract useful information like prospect interests. If you don't think of our relationship with computers as collaborative, then you're stuck with these two options. Either you read every single contact report and hand code the interest data that you find, or you invest in some kind of software automation thing that's going to be extremely expensive and won't end up working very well. But doing the job all by yourself and having the computer do the job all by itself are not the only options. We can work together. It's not that difficult to slightly modify our own writing styles in such a way that computers can extract the information, thus opening up all new types of querying and analysis. With something like this, we can now set up automated triggers to add interest codes to the database. We can analyze trends in prospect interests over time, and we can create models to identify potential interests in the future. So what we've seen so far are these two examples where rigidly structured data is one of the key ways that we're able to communicate with our computers and share the workload. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. At Berkeley, we made this system for prospecting called the Discovery Engine, or a DISCO engine for short. An important part of this system is a simplified language for describing a constituency, which you see up there, Don't worry if you have no idea what you're looking at. There's not going to be a quiz or anything. But know that this is a piece of computer code that every single one of our analysts is able to write in order to define a constituency, and then they just pull reports based on what they wrote. That works because we wrote a computer program that turns what you see up above into SQL and runs against the data warehouse. If you're interested in knowing more about the Discovery Engine or confused by what you're seeing, there's an article about it in the Apra Connections magazine, so go check it out. But the main thing I want to draw your attention to right now is even if you've never heard of or seen the Discovery Engine, you can probably look up at what you see on the screen above you and figure out what it is we're trying to accomplish, even though you've never seen this language before. And our computers can understand it too. So this is a shared language. Our computers use these definitions in order to go out and query the database and create reports. So a system like this gives us the ability to clearly describe and document our own thinking when we're working on complex projects. And it doesn't look supernatural, but it's not terribly difficult for humans to read. And with a bit of practice, it's not that hard to write either. Importantly, it's something that the computer can make sense of too. And by using this language that's computer-friendly, we have this great advantage that we can just automatically run reports and get lists without having to put in any extra effort or write SQL. Once again, we as humans have to make a relatively small sacrifice in order to accommodate our machine colleagues. If I weren't concerned about making something that was machine comprehensible, I might describe this same constituency in this way. That probably would seem easier for me in the short term, but it pretty much rules out the possibility of the computer automatically querying the database, which is something that the computer does pretty well, and producing these lists and reports. And that's what really ends up saving me so much time and effort. Now, the advantages don't stop there. By agreeing to use this limited and shared language, we create a space for an even deeper partnership with our digital pals. That's because not only can the computer read and process those constituency definitions that we create and produce reports, the computer can also produce its own constituency definitions for us. The Discovery Engine includes these little components that we've been calling bots that, given a few prompts, will produce relevant constituency definitions automatically. And the bots can be chained together, and they start to seem intelligent, even though it's not that intelligent what's happening in the background. So again, you don't have to totally understand everything you're looking at, but this is a plain text search for data and data science all through the database. There's nowhere in our database that explicitly links computer science or statistics directly to the ideas of data science. That's just something that the computer automatically inferred when I submitted my search. So by creating this prospecting system that's accessible for humans, but is also machine-friendly, we've updated our own role to an editorial one. We used to just be writing these definitions, but now we're like curators or editors. We just have to pick and choose from various definitions that are being automatically generated by machines. So why do I care so much about this idea? Of the various narratives that surround our use of technology, on the one hand, it helps us automate the monotonous, or on the other hand, robots are soon going to replace every single one of us. The one that I'm most interested in is the way that technology has changed how we actually conceive of our work and continues to change the scope of our work. It's easy to take these changes for granted when they're happening to you, so I'm going to use an example from outside of our own sphere. When word processors and personal computers were brand new, most professional authors completely ignored them. The few who paid attention thought of them as slightly less messy typewriters. You still write your manuscript on pen and paper, and then you type it up, or more likely pay a typist to do so for you, and then you send the printout to your publisher. But certain innovations, in particular, the ability to move blocks of text around via copy and paste, and the ability to find and replace text, had a profound effect on the way some writers saw their work. They no longer had to start at the beginning and work their way to the end. They could kind of jump around in their plot. For example, what you see above is the quote from the author William Gibson. He says, "It was hugely freeing. Text became literally plastic with cut and paste." Similarly, here's Ursula K. Guin when she first was introduced to the word processor. I was aware even back then that the computer might encourage certain complex movements of narrative, recursions, implications to be followed, forking paths, etc., that were very much in my head as I wrote the book. Did you hear that? The computer might encourage these things. That's her acknowledging the possibility of collaboration with the machine as she writes. So one piece of software in particular, called WordStar, was the first WYSIWYG, or what you see is what you get, word processor. I know I'm supposed to talk about the future. Sorry, I'm talking about a 40-year-old word processor. I'll get there. But this word processor was transformational for a huge group of writers, a diverse group of writers, including Ralph Ellison, Anne Rice, William F. Buckley Jr., Michael Chabon. That's probably the first time you've heard all those authors in the same sentence. As well as one writer who's known today for sprawling, detailed worlds, featuring distinct interwoven narratives and hundreds of characters. That's right. George R.R. Martin was an early adopter of WordStar. In fact, he still uses it today. This is him just a couple of years ago. If you're wondering why his next book is taking so long. While I'm not suggesting that his novels wouldn't have been possible without the word processor, I do think it's clear that this technology facilitated the building of these intricate, complex storylines that branch and merge and branch again, where the author has to keep track of dozens of plot lines and hundreds of characters and jump around as he's writing. In this case, the computer didn't replace the novelist, nor was its only impact the way it made the writing process faster or more efficient. It also opened up completely new forms of storytelling for some of these authors. It transformed the way that some authors saw their own work. So at Berkeley, we found ourselves supporting new interdisciplinary and affinity-based programs where we can't just prospect from traditional groups like alumni or degree holders. The Discovery Engine, with its ability to unearth constituencies that were already in our database, has helped us tackle this new kind of work. We further found ourselves being asked brand new questions. In addition to identifying prospects, we've begun partnering with gift officers to develop appropriate solicitation strategies. As our university gears up for another campaign, we're being asked questions like, what would be the impact if we held more events in Southern California? The sorts of what-if questions that require us to model scenarios in ways that I never had to before. And of course, we're constantly on the lookout for ways to measure and evaluate the impact of our own work. So what's going to be our WordStar? I suspect it'll be built on the type of human-machine collaboration that we saw earlier in this talk. By looking to our computers as partners that complement and enhance our knowledge and expertise, that's the human expertise, we can cultivate the imagination that we need to build tools that not only allow us to do our work today, but that will expand the scope of what we even call prospect development in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Tark. That was amazing. And thank you to all of our speakers. Y'all did an amazing job today. Give them a round of applause. So now it's time to put what you just learned to the test. On your table, you will see a white envelope. In that envelope are some questions relating to today's presentations. Y'all will have about 25 minutes or so to discuss the questions, then we'll regroup to talk about some of the common themes. We'll be monitoring the Twitter feed, so make sure you tweet different topics that you're talking about using the hashtag ApraPD2017, so we can come back and discuss. So we'll be back in about 25 minutes or so. So get started, folks. Welcome back, everyone. The conversations today were amazing. Did y'all enjoy the talks this morning? So I kind of walked through the tables a little bit, listened to a few conversations. We monitored the Twitter feed that was up a moment ago. The conversations were fascinating. There were some people waxing nostalgic about what it was like to do research back in the early 90s, and we had some people that just could not fathom how to do research without the internet, and a lot of compare and contrast in that way. There was a lot of conversations about technology challenges. How do you make technology work for you? How do you adapt to new technology? A bunch of those different conversations. A lot of people looking forward. What's going to happen in 30 years? And one table over here said, quote, cockroaches and Twinkies, which was rather funny. And then how do we use tools to expand our thinking, using technology to increase production with staff, common language. And one thing that came up in several different contexts was technology and relationships. Is technology supplanting the personal relationship, both with internal colleagues as well as with prospects? So that was really, really fascinating. So amazing conversations. Y'all keep up the conversation moving forward. We are our own best resource. Through our collaboration, we're able to do some amazing, amazing things, as was evidenced by our great speakers this morning. And we would love to thank Joe, Heather, and Tarek. Let's give them one last round of applause. We also want to thank Liz and Ryan for being our fabulous Apra Talks co-chairs this year. Liz and Ryan, stand up. Let's give them a round of applause. So thank you all so much for being an amazing group. The conversations were fantastic. Please keep those conversations going. If you have any questions, feel free to talk to any of us. As always, we're all here for each other. And have a great day of sessions. Oh wait, before we finish up, I do have 2 things for housekeeping really, really fast. On the session schedule, please note that some sessions are noted as a part 1 and part 2. They are one 90-minute session, not 2 separate 45-minute sessions. So know that. If you have any questions, please consult the Apra app or find any Apra staff. Check with hospitality or registration if you have any questions as well. Also, if you have your passports filled out, make sure that you have them filled out and are in the exhibition hall by 10:40, because that's when they're going to be doing the drawings. So again, thank you all and have a fabulous day.